The ships came without warning. On a Tuesday morning in the year 2247, the people of Earth looked up at the sky and saw darkness. Massive vessels blocked out the sun over every major city. They were black as night, smooth as glass, and bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship stretched for kilometers, hanging in the air like mountains made of shadow. In New York, children pointed at the sky. In Tokyo, traffic stopped completely. In Lagos, prayers rose from 1,000,000 voices. The whole world held its breath. Secretary General stood in the United Nations building, watching the ships through the tall windows. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen many troubles. She had led humanity through climate disasters, through food shortages, through the chaos of the first colony ships leaving for distant stars. But she had never seen anything like this. "We are receiving a transmission," said her assistant, his voice shaking. "They want to speak to our leaders." The screen flickered to life. The being that appeared was not human. It stood 3 meters tall with a body made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its form like blood through veins. When it spoke, its voice was cold and empty, like wind through a dead forest. "I am ambassador of the Galactic Council of 12 Dominions. You are the species called humanity. You have been observed. You have been measured. You have been found acceptable for integration." Stepped forward. Integration, what does that mean? The crystal being tilted its head as if the question amused it. "It means you now belong to the Council. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is simply what is. Every species that reaches the stars must serve the greater order. And if we refuse?" Made a sound that might have been laughter. No species refuses. In 12,000 years across 4,000 worlds, not one species has been foolish enough to resist. Those who tried in ancient times were erased. Their planets are now dust. Their names are forgotten. The being raised one crystalline hand, and images appeared on every screen across Earth. Planets burning, cities crumbling, species dying by the billions. The images were old, but the message was clear. "These are your terms," continued. "You will give us 30% of your population to serve as workers in our mines and factories. You will give us 40% of your planetary resources. You will surrender all military vessels and weapons. In exchange, you will be allowed to continue existing under our protection." Felt her hands turn cold. Around her, advisors whispered in panic. Some wept. Some argued that they had no choice. The aliens were too powerful. Their technology was centuries beyond anything Earth could match. Fighting would mean death for everyone. "You have one rotation of your planet to accept," said. "When your sun rises again, we will have your answer. Choose wisely. Choose survival." The screen went dark. The hours that followed were the longest in human history. Leaders from every nation gathered in emergency meetings. Scientists studied the alien ships and reported back with grim faces. The vessels had weapons that could crack a planet in half. Their shields could stop nuclear missiles like raindrops against a window. In a straight fight, humanity would last perhaps hours. "We have to accept," said the European Prime Minister, his face pale. "We have no choice. Some of us surviving is better than all of us dying." "They want our children," shouted the Brazilian president. "They want to take our children and make them slaves. How can we agree to that?" "How can we refuse?" asked another leader. "You saw those images. You saw what they did to others." The argument went on and on. Some spoke of honor. Some spoke of survival. Some simply sat in silence, unable to find words. Through it all sat quiet and still. She listened to every voice. She watched the fear spread through the room like poison, and she thought about history. She thought about her grandmother who had survived a war as a child. She thought about the stories of plagues that killed millions, yet humanity continued. She thought about ice ages and famines and disasters that should have ended their species. Again and again, death had come for humanity. Again and again, humanity had refused to die. Finally she stood. The room fell silent, every eye turned to her. "I have a question," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Have any of you studied our own history? Do you know what we have survived?" She walked to the center of the room. 70,000 years ago, our species was reduced to fewer than 10,000 people. We should have died then. We did not. We faced ice that covered continents and we built fires. We faced predators with nothing but sticks and stones and we won. We faced diseases that killed half our population and we buried our dead and kept living. Her voice grew stronger. We have fought world wars. We have created weapons that could destroy ourselves 10 times over. We have looked into the face of extinction again and again. And every single time we have said the same thing. She turned to face the screen, knowing was watching. Knowing the whole council was watching. "Not today, not us, not ever." "Madame Secretary," whispered an advisor, "what are you doing?" "I am giving our answer." She pressed the transmission button. "Ambassador, I speak for humanity. We have heard your demands, we have considered your threats, and we have decided." The crystal being appeared on the screen, its form flickering with what might have been anticipation. "You accept our terms?" "No," the word rang through the room like a bell. "We reject them completely. We will not give you our people. We will not give you our resources. We will not surrender our ships or our weapons. We will not kneel." Stood perfectly still. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the being leaned forward as if it could not believe what it had heard. "You understand what this means. You will be destroyed. Your cities will burn. Your species will end." "Perhaps," said, "or perhaps not. You have not fought a war in 8,000 years. You have forgotten what it means to face an enemy that would rather die than submit. You have conquered slaves. You have never conquered us. This is madness." "No, this is humanity." She stood taller than she had ever stood before. "We were not born in comfort. We were born in struggle. We did not grow strong through peace. We grew strong through survival. You think your weapons make you powerful. Power is not what you hold. Power is what you refuse to surrender." She took a breath. "Here is our answer, Ambassador. We will not yield, not now, not ever. If you want our world, you will have to take it from our cold, dead hands. And I promise you this, those hands will be wrapped around your throat when we fall." The transmission ended. Silence filled the room. Every leader stared at with wide eyes. She had just declared war against an enemy they could not defeat. She had just sentenced humanity to destruction. Or had she? Slowly, one by one, the leaders began to stand. The fear in their eyes was still there, but something else was growing beside it. Something older than fear. Something that had kept humanity alive through 1,000,000 dark nights. It was fire, it was defiance. It was the simple, stubborn refusal to kneel. Far above Earth, in the command center of the Council fleet, stared at the blank screen. In 12,000 years, across 4,000 species, no one had ever said no. Until now. "Interesting," the ambassador whispered to itself. "Very interesting indeed." The news spread across Earth in minutes. Humanity had refused. Humanity had said no. And now humanity had 30 days to prepare for war against an enemy that had never lost. Ambassador had been confused at first. He asked for the message to be translated again, certain that some error had occurred. When Earth confirmed its answer, he simply nodded and sent word to the Council. The correction fleet would arrive in 1 month. The humans would be punished like all the others before them. But the Council had never faced humans before. On the first day, something remarkable happened. Nations that had argued for centuries suddenly stopped fighting. Old enemies shook hands. Borders opened. Resources flowed freely from country to country. The United Earth Defense Compact was formed in a single afternoon, and every nation signed without argument. Admiral Wei took command of Earth's space fleet. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind like a computer. She had commanded ships for 30 years, but she had never commanded a war. Still, she did not hesitate. Hesitation was death. "Show me what we have," she said to her officers. The answer was not encouraging. Earth's fleet numbered 42 ships. Most were exploration vessels, not warships. They had basic weapons and thin armor. The Council fleet would bring over 2,000 vessels, each one more powerful than anything humans had built. "So we cannot win in a straight fight," said. "Good. That means we will not fight straight." She gathered the minds on Earth, engineers, scientists, soldiers, and even artists. She asked them one question: how do you kill a giant? The answers came quickly. You do not fight the giant with strength. You fight with speed, with tricks, with traps. You make the giant bleed from 1,000 small cuts until it falls. Doctor was an intelligence officer with a gift for finding secrets. He spent his days studying everything humans knew about the Council. What he found gave him hope. "They have not fought a real war in 8,000 years, he reported to the command center. "Their last major conflict ended before humans discovered farming. Every correction since then has been a slaughter of unarmed populations. They send overwhelming force, destroy any resistance, and move on. They are very good at killing those who cannot fight back." "And those who can fight back?" asked. Smiled. "They have forgotten what that looks like." The Council's weakness was its strength. They were so powerful that they had grown lazy. Their tactics had not changed in. Their soldiers trained for crowd control, not combat. Their commanders had never lost a battle because they had never faced a real enemy. Humanity would remind them what war really meant. Across the world, factories ran day and night. Car factories built missiles. Electronics plants built drones. Mining companies dug tunnels for bunkers. In 1 month, humanity produced more weapons than it had in the previous century. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter became a minefield. Millions of bombs floated in the darkness, waiting for Council ships to pass through. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn hid weapons platforms, buried deep under ice and rock. Earth itself was fortified like never before. Every city had bunkers. Every citizen had a role. The elderly trained the young in survival skills. Teachers became medics. Farmers became soldiers. There were no civilians anymore. There were only humans, and all humans would fight. On the moon, in a secret laboratory, Doctor worked on something that could change everything. She was a physicist who had spent her life studying the strange rules that governed the universe at its smallest scale. Now, she was trying to turn those rules into a weapon. "Project Prometheus," she explained to Secretary General during a secure call. "The theory is simple. The space between atoms is not empty. It is filled with energy, constantly appearing and disappearing. If we can disrupt that energy in a controlled way, we can create a wave that will shut down any electronics in its path." "How large an area?" "If we build it big enough, an entire fleet." The problem was time. Building such a device should take years, had less than a month. She and her team stopped sleeping. They lived on coffee and determination. They made mistakes, corrected them, made more mistakes. The clock was always ticking. Meanwhile, something unexpected began to happen. Messages started arriving from across the galaxy. The first came from a species called They had been slaves of the Council for 3,000 years. Their message was short: "We are watching. We are hopping." The second came from who built the Council's ships. They sent technical data about Council weapons, their weak points, their power sources. "Use this well," they wrote. "We cannot fight, but you can." More messages followed. Some offered information, some offered prayers, some simply said, "Do not give up." Humanity was not alone. Across 1,000 worlds, oppressed species were watching Earth's defiance. They had lived without hope for so long that they had forgotten what it looked like. Now, one small species on one small planet was showing them something they had never seen. Resistance was possible. The Council could be challenged. The giants could bleed. Admiral read the messages with tears in her eyes. Then she wiped her face and returned to work. The fleet needed to be ready. The traps needed to be set. There was no time for emotion. On the final day before the correction fleet's arrival, she stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Spirit of Earth. It was a converted cargo ship with weapons welded to its hull. Compared to Council warships, it looked like a toy. Her first officer stood beside her, looking out at the stars. "Admiral, do you think we can win?" Was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her mother, who had raised 5 children alone after her father died. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived famine and war and still managed to smile every day. She thought about all the humans who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. "I think we will make them remember us," she said finally. "I think we will hurt them in ways they never imagined. I think when the history of this galaxy is written, they will talk about what humanity did here. And if we lose, then we lose standing up, we lose fighting, we lose making them pay for every meter they take." She turned to face her officer. "They think we are afraid because we are small, because we are weak, because our ships are few and our technology is old. They do not understand." "Understand what?" Smiled, and there was something fierce in it. Something that had burned in human hearts since the first cave dweller faced a predator with nothing but a sharp rock. "Fear does not make us weak. Fear makes us dangerous. Every human child grows up knowing that the universe is vast and cold and does not care if we live or die. We survive anyway. We fight anyway. We build and dream and reach for the stars anyway. That is what they do not understand." She looked out at the darkness between the stars. Somewhere out there, 2,000 warships were coming to destroy her world. "They have conquered species who accepted their fate," she said. "They have never faced a species that would rather burn than kneel. They have no idea what fear has made us become." The stars glittered cold and distant. The clock struck midnight. The correction fleet would arrive with the dawn. And humanity was ready. The correction fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm rolling over the horizon. 2,400 warships, each one a monster of black metal and terrible weapons. At their head flew the flagship of High Executor, a vessel called the Eternal Judgment. It was 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack moons in half. Stood on his command bridge, watching the human solar system appear on his screens. He was old by Council standards, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like yellow ice. He had commanded 40 corrections in his career. Not one had lasted more than a week. "Begin standard approach," he ordered. "We will be finished by nightfall." His officers obeyed without question. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a wall of destruction that no primitive species could stop. Then they reached the asteroid belt. The first explosion caught everyone by surprise. A Council cruiser vanished in a ball of fire, torn apart by a mine hidden in a spinning rock. Before anyone could react, more explosions followed. Ships tried to change course, but the asteroids were everywhere and so were the bombs. "What is this?" demanded. "Mines, High Executor, thousands of them. They are hidden in the asteroid field." "Then fly around it." "The field is too large. Going around would take days." Claus dug into his command chair. Days. The schedule called for hours. No species had ever made them waste days. "Push through, accept losses. We have ships to spare." The fleet pressed forward and ships continued to die. For every mine they found and destroyed, 2 more exploded against their hulls. By the time they cleared the asteroid belt, 87 ships were gone. Had never lost 87 ships in an entire correction. He had lost them in an afternoon. But worse was waiting. As the fleet approached the gas giants, weapons batteries hidden on their moons opened fire. Rail guns launched projectiles at incredible speeds. The Council had shields, but the shields were designed for energy weapons. Solid metal traveling at a fraction of light speed punched through like needles through cloth. More ships fell. 100, 200. The council formation broke as captains tried to avoid fire, screamed orders demanding discipline, but panic was spreading through his fleet. Then the human ships appeared. There were only 40 of them, tiny compared to council vessels. They should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, they attacked like wolves against bears. They did not fight in formation. They darted and weaved, firing missiles and retreating before the council could respond. Admiral commanded from the spirit of Earth, her voice calm even as chaos erupted around her. Group 3 hit their supply ships. Group 5 target their communication vessels. Do not engage the warships directly. Make them chase you. Make them angry. Make them stupid. The human ships were fast and small. The council ships were slow and large. Every time a council vessel turned to face an attacker, the human ship was already gone, striking somewhere else. It was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. The council began using their heaviest weapons, blasts of energy that could vaporize asteroids. But the humans had studied these weapons. They knew the charge time, the range, the angle. They danced around the blasts like they could see the future. Doctor's intelligence had been correct. The council had forgotten how to fight an enemy that fought back. Their tactics assumed the enemy would stand still and die. The humans did neither. By the end of the first day, the council had lost over 300 ships. They had destroyed only 12 human vessels in return. Stood in his command center, staring at the casualty reports. His hands shook. In his entire career, he had never seen numbers like these. He had never imagined them. "High Executor," said one of his officers nervously, "perhaps we should request reinforcements." "No," his voice was hard as stone. "We will not show weakness. We will crush these insects, begin the ground invasion. If they wish to fight in space, we will take the battle to their home." Council landing ships descended on Earth like rain. They expected to find frightened populations hiding in their homes, waiting to be captured. They expected easy victory. They found hell instead. The first landing force touched down in a European city. Within minutes, they were under attack. Humans emerged from buildings, from sewers, from rubble. They carried weapons of every kind: military rifles, hunting shotguns, homemade explosives, kitchen knives. Council soldiers wore heavy armor. It protected them from most attacks, but most was not all. Humans aimed for gaps in the armor. They aimed for joints and visors and power packs. When guns did not work, they used fire. When fire did not work, they used their bare hands. A council squad cornered a group of humans in a destroyed building. The squad leader expected surrender. Instead, a woman stepped forward. She was holding something in her hand. "You want our world," she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes burned with something the council soldier had never seen before. Then she pressed the button, and the building exploded. The squad was destroyed. The woman was destroyed. The humans she had been protecting escaped through the smoke and continued fighting. Reports like this came from every landing zone. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not run. Humans fought with everything they had, and when they had nothing left, they used their deaths as weapons. In Asia, a school teacher led a group of students to safety, then turned back to face council soldiers with a hunting rifle. She killed 3 before they killed her. In South America, an old man crashed his truck into a council transport, destroying it and himself. In Africa, children threw rocks at soldiers until they were cut down, and their parents charged the soldiers with farming tools. The council had conquered 4,000 species. None of them had fought like this. Watched the reports with growing horror. This was not a correction. This was not a punishment. This was war, real war, the kind his ancestors had fought 8,000 years ago, the kind he had only read about in history texts. "What are these creatures?" he whispered to himself. His communication officer approached with a report. "High Executor, we are receiving messages from the tributary worlds. They are watching the broadcasts of the battle. Some are beginning to ask questions, dangerous questions. Felt cold. The Council's power depended on fear. If the tributary species saw that resistance was possible, if they saw the Council bleeding. Block all transmissions from this system. No information leaves until we are finished. Yes, High Executor. But it was too late. The messages had already spread. Across 1,000 worlds, slaves looked at their screens and saw Council ships burning. They saw Council soldiers dying. They saw a species that would not kneel. And something began to stir. Something that had been sleeping for 8,000 years. Hoping. In space, Admiral looked at her tactical display. She had lost over half her ships. The rest were damaged and low on ammunition. The Council fleet was hurt, but it was still overwhelming. They could not win this way. They needed something more. "What is the status of Project Prometheus?" she asked. "Doctor reports the device is ready, but delivering it to the Council fleet will require." "I know what it will require," closed her eyes. "Tell her to prepare for deployment. I will lead the mission myself." She had always known it might come to this. Some victories required sacrifice. And humanity had never been afraid to pay that price. Admiral gathered her remaining captains for one final meeting. There were only 7 ships left now, all damaged, all running low on everything. The faces on her screen were tired and bloody, but not one of them looked ready to give up. "I will not lie to you," she said. "What I am asking is a one-way mission. We must deliver the Prometheus device directly into the heart of the Council fleet. Once activated, it will disable their ships, but we will not survive the approach." Silence filled the channel. Then Captain of the destroyer Santiago spoke. "Admiral, every one of us knew we might die when we joined this fight. We knew it when Earth said no. We are not afraid." "We are afraid," corrected Captain Obi of the frigate Lagos. "We are terrified, but we are going anyway. That is what makes us human." Felt tears burn in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. "Then let us show them what 8 billion hearts can do when they beat as one. Operation Thermopylae begins at dawn." The plan was simple in design and terrible in cost. The 7 ships would charge directly at the Council fleet, drawing all fire toward themselves. They would push through the barrage, taking hit after hit, until they reached the center of the enemy formation. Then they would activate Prometheus. If it worked, the Council fleet would be crippled. If it failed, humanity would lose its last ships and its last chance. Broadcast one final message to Earth. "To all who can hear me, we go now to buy you time. Use it well, remember us kindly, and never ever surrender." Then the 7 ships began their charge. The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams lit up the darkness. Missiles flew in swarms. The first human ship exploded within minutes, its crew dying in fire but never slowing down. The second ship followed, then the third. Each one pushed a little further, a little closer to the center. Watched from his command bridge, unable to understand what he was seeing. The human ships were flying directly into destruction. It was suicide. It was madness. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Why do they not retreat?" No one had an answer. The 4th ship died. The 5th. Now only 2 remained, the Spirit of Earth and the Lagos. Both were burning, their hulls torn open, their systems failing, but they kept moving forward. Captain Obi's ship took a direct hit to its engine core. He had seconds left. "Admiral," he said through the static, "it has been an honor. Finish this." The Lagos rammed into a Council battleship, destroying both in a massive explosion. The path was clear. Admiral flew the Spirit of Earth into the center of the Council fleet. Council ships surrounded her on all sides, but they hesitated to fire. If they missed, they would hit each other. "Now," she said. The Prometheus device activated. A wave of energy spread outward like ripples in a pond. It passed through Council ships like wind through leaves, and wherever it touched, systems died. Weapons went silent. Engines stopped. Lights flickered and faded. 40% of the Council fleet went dark in an instant. Flagship shook as the wave hit. Screens exploded. Power failed. Emergency lights cast red shadows across his command bridge. "What was that?" he screamed. "What did they do?" No one could answer. Half his officers were unconscious from the shock. The other half were trying to restart systems that refused to respond. The spirit of Earth drifted in the center of the chaos, its mission complete. Admiral sat in her command chair, watching Council ships float helplessly around her. She was dying. Her ship was dying, but she was smiling. "We did it," she whispered. "We hurt them." A Council cruiser that had survived the wave turned its weapons toward her crippled ship, closed her eyes. She thought about her family. She thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of people she had just given a chance to survive. The cruiser fired, and the spirit of Earth was gone. But her sacrifice was not wasted, not at all. Across the galaxy, species watched the battle through stolen transmissions. The Council had tried to block the signals, but the engineers who built their systems had left back doors. Every tributary world saw the Council fleet burning. Every slave saw the impossible become possible. A female named Ra stood in a mining pit where her people had worked for 3,000 years. She had been born a slave. Her mother had been born a slave. Her grandmother had been born a slave. Now she watched a tiny species on a tiny planet make the mighty Council bleed. She dropped her mining tool. Around her, others stopped working. They looked at each other, seeing something in each other's eyes that had not been there for generations. "No more," Ra said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard. "No more." The overseers rushed forward to punish her. They never made it. The fell upon them like a wave, thousands against dozens, unarmed against armed. Many died, but when it was over, the overseers were gone. The uprising had begun. Similar scenes played out across 100 worlds. They refused to build more ships. They sabotaged the ones they had already built. The Ani, a warrior species crushed centuries ago, emerged from hiding places on their dead moons. They still had weapons. They still remembered how to fight. They destroyed their own refineries rather than let the Council use the fuel. The rebels seized a communication station and broadcast humanity's message to 1,000 more worlds. The galaxy was waking up. On Earth, Secretary General received reports of the uprisings with tears streaming down her face. Humanity's defiance had started something that could not be stopped. Even if Earth fell, the fire would burn on. She made one more broadcast, not just to Earth, but to everyone listening across the stars. "We are humanity," she said. "We were born in fire, raised in struggle, and forged by adversity. We do not kneel. And now we say to every species living under the Council's boot, rise, rise with us, be afraid, but rise anyway. You have been slaves because you believed you had no choice. Now you know the truth. There is always a choice, and the choice is yours." Back at Earth, finally restored power to his flagship. He looked at his tactical display and felt something he had never felt before in his long military career. Fear. Half his fleet was disabled or destroyed. The tributary worlds were erupting in rebellion. His supply lines were threatened. His communication networks were compromised. And the humans, the cursed humans, were still fighting on their planet below. He received new orders from the Council of 12. The message was clear and cold: destroy Earth completely, glass every city, leave nothing alive, make an example so terrible that no species will ever resist again. Looked at the blue planet on his screen. He had seen many worlds die. He had killed billions without hesitation. But this world, these humans, made him hesitate. They had beaten him. Not completely, not finally, but they had beaten him in ways that mattered. They had proven that the Council could bleed. They had lit a fire that was spreading across the galaxy. Even if he destroyed them now, their victory was already complete. But orders were orders. "Prepare the planet-killer weapon," he said. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. "We will finish this." Below, on the burning surface of Earth, humanity waited. They knew what was coming. They saw the massive weapon charging on the Council flagship. They knew they had hours, maybe less. But they did not hide. They did not weep. They gathered their families close, looked up at the sky, and waited. If this was the end, they would face it standing. As they always had, the planet-killer weapon was charging. Every human could see it in the sky, a growing ball of terrible light on the Council flagship. When it fired, it would turn Earth's surface to glass. Mountains would become dust. Oceans would boil away. Every trace of humanity would be erased. In bunkers around the world, families held each other close. Parents told children stories about brave ancestors. Grandparents sang old songs. Nobody ran. Nobody screamed. After weeks of fighting, of bleeding, of refusing to surrender, humanity had no fear left to feel. Secretary General stood in the ruins of Geneva, watching the light grow brighter in the sky. Her son James was up there somewhere, commanding one of the tiny ships that had survived the battle. She had not spoken to him in days. She might never speak to him again. "Is this how it ends?" asked an aide beside her. "Every story ends," said quietly. "The question is whether it ends well." She thought about everything humanity had accomplished. They had stood against impossible odds. They had made tyrants bleed. They had lit a fire of hope across a galaxy of slaves. Even if they died today, their story would be told for 1,000 years. That was enough. That had to be enough. Then the sky changed. New lights appeared, not from the Council fleet but from behind Earth. Hundreds of lights, then thousands, streaming out of hyperspace like stars being born. Ships of every shape and size. Ships held together with patches and prayers. Ships that had been hidden for centuries. Ships that had been built in secret, in stolen hours, by species who had dreamed of this moment for generations. The Liberation Fleet came first, a ragged armada of stolen Council vessels and converted cargo ships. Behind them flew the who knew Council ships better than anyone and had built their own copies with hidden improvements. The Ani dreadnoughts emerged from the shadows, ancient weapons finally awakened. More followed. A dozen species whose names humanity had never heard, species who had watched Earth's defiance and decided that this was the moment to break their chains. A transmission reached every ship in the system, broadcast in 1,000 languages. It was a human phrase, simple and clear, translated for all to understand. "We will not yield." Watched his screens in disbelief. The numbers kept rising. 500 enemy ships, 1,000, more arriving every minute. These were not military vessels. They were junk garbage, the desperate hope of desperate people. But there were so many of them. "High Executor," said his tactical officer, his voice shaking. "They are surrounding us. They are blocking our escape routes." "Then we fight through them." Claus dug into his command chair. "We have the superior weapons. We have the superior training. We will destroy these rebels and then we will destroy Earth." But his voice lacked conviction, and everyone could hear it. The Battle of Earth's last stand began. It was not a clean fight. It was not a professional fight. It was a desperate, bloody mess of ships crashing together, weapons firing wildly, pilots dying by the hundreds. The Council had better ships, the rebels had more heart, and sometimes heart was enough. Commander James flew a damaged frigate called the Hope of Lagos. It was the last human warship still fighting, barely able to maintain power, held together by emergency repairs and stubbornness. He saw the planet-killer weapon nearly fully charged. He saw his flagship preparing to fire. He knew that the rebel fleet could not reach it in time. There was only one option. "All crew abandon ship," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods now." "Sir," his first officer stared at him. "That is an order. I am going to finish this, but I am not taking anyone else with me." The crew hesitated, then obeyed. James watched them go, then turned his ship toward the Council flagship. He opened a channel to Earth, to his mother. "Mom," he said, "I know you are listening. I need you to know something." His voice came through, broken by static but clear enough. "James, James, what are you doing?" "What we always do, what we have always done." He smiled, even though she could not see it. "I am not running, I am not kneeling, I am standing up like you taught me." "James, please. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them we did not give up. Tell them we never stopped fighting." He closed the channel. The Hope of Lagos accelerated towards flagship. Council ships tried to intercept, but they were too slow, too focused on the rebel fleet surrounding them. Saw the human ship approaching. He saw its course, understood its purpose. "Stop that ship," he screamed. "Destroy it." Weapons fire filled the space around James. His ship shook as pieces were torn away. Warning lights screamed. Hull breaches spread. Fire erupted across multiple decks. But he kept flying. The Hope of Lagos struck flagship just below the command bridge. The impact was massive, tearing through armor and structure, reaching the core systems that powered the planet-killer weapon. Both ships exploded together. James' final transmission was broadcast across the battle. "Tell my mother I didn't kneel." The explosion crippled flagship. The planet-killer weapon's power systems failed, releasing energy in an uncontrolled burst that tore the great ship apart. Died in his command chair, still unable to understand how primitives had defeated him. Without their flagship, without their commander, the Council fleet fell apart. Some ships fled into hyperspace. Others surrendered. Still others fought to the death because they had nothing left to lose. The battle lasted 3 more hours. When it ended, the space around Earth was filled with wreckage from both sides. Thousands had died. Ships drifted without power, their crews waiting for rescue. But Earth still stood. Humanity still lived. And the Council had fallen. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Council of 12, which had ruled for 12,000 years, was broken. 3 of the dominions surrendered immediately. 5 more collapsed into civil war. The remaining 4 tried to hold on, but their power was gone. The slaves they had ruled no longer feared them. 1 year later, a new government formed. The Galactic Concord was built on a single principle: no species would ever be enslaved again. Every member world had an equal voice. Every species had the right to freedom. Earth and rebuilding became a symbol, not of power or conquest, but of defiance. Species from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to see the tiny blue world that had said no to gods and lived. In Geneva, they built a memorial. It stood where the old United Nations had been, rising from the ruins like a promise kept. The names of everyone who had died were carved into its walls: Admiral, Captain Obi, the millions of civilians who had fought with whatever they had, and at the very top, Commander James. Secretary General stood before the memorial on the day it was finished. She was older now, her hair white, her shoulders bent by grief and time, but her eyes still burned with the same fire that had made her say no to an empire. She placed flowers at the base of the wall beneath her son's name. Then she looked up at the sky, at the stars that had once seemed so cold and threatening. They were not threatening anymore. They were filled with friends, with allies, with species who had learned the same lesson humanity had always known. Freedom is not given, it is taken, it is fought for, it is earned with blood and tears and sacrifice. And it is worth every cost. A delegation from the stood behind her, waiting to pay their respects. Ra, now a leader of her people, stepped forward. "We owe you everything," she said. "You showed us that resistance was possible." Shook her head. "You freed yourselves. We just reminded you that you could." She looked at the inscription carved into the base of the memorial. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything humanity had suffered and achieved. They demanded we kneel. We chose to stand. For those who came before, for those who come after, we did not yield. The sun set over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Watched the light fade, thinking of her son, her world, and the future he had died to create. The stars came out, one by one, filling the darkness with light. And for the first time in a long time, they looked like hope.